Hello everyone, Crash here, this is RTA Motorsports. Today we're going to be talking about the Oculus Rift S and how it pertains to sim racing. Here we go.
Welcome to RTA Motorsports.
Alright everyone, before we actually go into my thoughts and opinions on this headset and whether or not I actually recommend it, I wanted to go into some of the technical aspects of this headset here and some of the design elements. And first we're going to talk about the screens. So the screens are an LCD display that is using the new RGB stripe technology. The resolution per eye is 1280 by 1440 per eye. Now that's higher than what we experienced with the Oculus Rift, the CV1, which was 1200 by 1080, but not quite as high as what you get with the Oculus Quest or like the Samsung Odyssey. And those use 1440 by 1600 displays. The design elements of the headset, it's using a different type of tracking system than we've seen in the past from Oculus. Very similar to the Oculus Quest or the Windows mixed reality headsets, where it's using an inside-out tracking solution using cameras on the headset. This one's a little bit of a different implementation of it. We have 5 cameras in total. So we do have 2 cameras in the front, very similar to Windows mixed reality. We have one on either side, but then we have the big, it's almost like a 360 camera on top, and that makes for the 5 cameras total. The Oculus Quest uses 4 cameras situated on each corner, and then Windows Mixed Reality only uses 2 cameras on the front. We'll go into my experiences as far as tracking in just a little bit. So the headset itself, most of the design of it, you're not going to find any fabric wrapping around the front of it like you do with the Oculus Quest or the Oculus Rift CV1. Most of it is plastic of various sort of finishes to it. And then you do have the big Halo head strap here, which is padded pretty well with the top head strap here. So this Halo design is very similar to what you would find with a lot of Windows mixed reality headsets or PSVR. The cable itself is 5 meters long, and on the end you have a USB 3.0 with a DisplayPort attachment. So my thoughts regarding the design of it. I do gotta say I was a little skeptical at first on what I would think of it when we first opened it up, because the Oculus Quest that we also own, I feel like it looks like a very premium headset. It's made from Oculus themselves, and it does have the fabric that wraps around the front, very similar and reminiscent to the Oculus Rift CV1. Also, the plastic on the front almost looks like it's a rubber texture on the Oculus Quest. Now on this one here, it's very clear that it's a plastic design, that all of this is plastic, and I was afraid that when I first looked at it, it would kind of cheapen the overall feel of it and the appearance of it. And I do gotta say I was pleasantly surprised that it actually did not. So the front of it here is a textured sort of flat plastic, and when you look at it, it almost looks like it's metallic gray. Down here you have a different type of texture. It almost looks like a speaker grill that houses the 2 front-facing cameras. And then you have this very interesting sort of very shiny plastic that you find in a lot of vehicles now, that separates the 2 textures from one another, so it makes it very interesting to look at. You do have the blue activity light in the front here when the headset's on and active. On the bottom you do have a microphone, a single microphone, right down here. The one aspect of that I do not like is due to live streaming. Now when you live stream and you use this microphone, we'll go into what that sounds like in a little bit, but from a design perspective, it's placed in such a way that I seem to grab. So whenever I grab the headset off, I tend to use my left hand. It's just personal preference, but it's right where my thumb placement would be whenever I grab the headset. It's right in the middle of the area most people will grip when they go to remove the headset. So I found every time I grab the headset, viewers or if I was recording, anyone would hear my finger kind of muffling or shuffling around the microphone, which wasn't that welcomed. Down on here you do have a large button to adjust the headset forward and back as far as the lenses, so that way you can set it for whether or not you're using it with glasses or not. You can move the lenses forward and away from you. Very big button. I wouldn't expect this button to be so big personally, but it does work, and that's where, let's move this cable, that's where you also get that front movement. So it's not a spring, like you would get on the on the Samsung Odyssey Gen 1. But at least there is some aspect of motion there, so you can move the headset forward and away from you, unlike the Samsung Odyssey Plus. Just wanted to hold for just a moment. Notice there is no IPD adjustment. We'll cover that in just a bit. But besides that, I do gotta say the headset is very attractive once you get it in your hands. It's a good looking headset. It's very light. It does kind of rattle a little bit if you shake it. You do hear the halo design kind of going into here and some of the mechanisms kind of shaking just a little bit. But besides that, it doesn't feel like a lesser headset than any of the other ones I have. It doesn't feel like it's made of cheaper materials. I do wish the Lenovo branding on the side here, because Lenovo actually partnered with Oculus and basically handled a lot of the manufacturing for this headset. I do wish the branding was a little bit smaller. I kind of feel like they kind of just threw it on there to show that they made this, but it's not that bad. I'm just kind of nitpicking at that point. The overall fit of this headset on my head, I do gotta say it's probably one of the most comfortable headsets I've worn in a long time. For me personally, and this is a very subjective sort of situation here, because I know a lot of you, when I did my Samsung Odyssey Plus video, were saying that you find that headset super comfortable. I couldn't wear that headset. It didn't fit me at all. It was the most uncomfortable headset for my shaped face. Now the Samsung Odyssey, the Gen 1, we still own, because I love the fitment of that headset. This one here, I do gotta say, it's super comfortable. It really is. And I do like their design element on their ratcheting solution in the back. Just a big wheel that's very easy to turn in and out, moves very smoothly. I do feel that with the halo design, the padding on it makes it just so that the headset itself feels not weightless on your head, but that the weight is evenly distributed around your head. And that's what a lot of headsets tend to fail at, including the Oculus Quest. The Oculus Quest is a comfortable headset. We'll get into that in its video, but it feels very front heavy. And I think it's just the design of the battery packs and the screens in that headset, as well as some other headsets tend to feel a little front heavy, whether it's the cable placement or just the design of the headset itself. This one, I do feel, because of no matter where you grab it, you kind of feel like the headset's weight is kind of evenly distributed through it. You get that sense when it's on your head. You don't feel like anything's pulling on your face. And for some reason, I don't get the VR goggles appearance that I still get with the Samsung Odyssey, and I've always gotten with the Vive and the Oculus Rift CV1, where you see that pressure on your face. So I do got to give them a big shout out there. So next, let's go into setup. Now, I did a live stream of the setup that we actually did, the unboxing in this setup. And if you've seen that video, you would see that setup is just totally a breeze with this. It's classic Oculus. Setting up is just easy as anything else. The pass-through cameras make it very easy to see, where you don't have to take your headset off like you do with the HTC Vive and trace out your play space or anything like that. You leave the headset on, you can actually see with the pass-through cameras, and I do like the implementation of the pass-through on this. It's like stereoscopic 3D. It's rendering, well, it's seeing where everything is in the world and kind of making it so it feels almost natural. There's still a little bit of, you know, camera graininess, and it's black and white, and you can tell it's an image you're looking at, but it feels a lot more natural when you're in it, so that way you get a sense of scale around you. Instead of the Oculus Quest, they kind of do a pretty good job with that. I'm wondering if it's the CPU that they put in it, the mobile processor, and its limitations. It kind of looks similar, but you could tell there's some depth perception issues. But because they did such a good job with that, you could leave the headset on, which you have to leave the headset on for setup, and it just makes it super easy. You put the headset on, you download the Oculus software, it walks you through within 15 minutes or even less than that. 15 minutes if you have to make an account. You have the headset up and running, and you're going through their suite of informative but also fun to play intro titles that they have. They have like the intro to Oculus and all those little videos that kind of teach you how to use the controllers, and you do some little things like you dance with a robot or you shoot a laser gun and stuff like that, and they teach you how to grip things and how to use the controllers. I do enjoy the setup process with the Oculus. I think they absolutely nail that process, especially for people just getting into VR. Very welcomed. But the controllers. So one of the most crucial parts of any sort of VR experience are the controllers. Now you can see I have two different controllers here. These are the Windows Mixed Reality controllers that come with the Samsung Odyssey. And these are the Oculus controllers, and these are the ones that came with the Oculus Rift S, but the same ones that come with the Oculus Quest. There are some differences in here, and as far as like fitment and things like that, there are some things I like better in one than the other, specifically with Windows Mixed Reality and the Oculus Rift S, or the new Oculus Touch controllers, I should say. I do love the size difference between the two. The Windows Mixed Reality controllers, when they first came in, I felt that they were so small, so sleek, because I was coming from the Vive wands, and the Vive wands are probably by far the most uncomfortable controllers once you see what else there is out there. When it was the only kid on the block, it was not bad. It only had to compare to the Oculus Rift Touch controllers, the first gen, and everyone knew that they weren't as ergonomic, but it was okay because there was only those two. But now there's a lot more players on the block, and now there's a lot more controllers out. Valve is now making the knuckles, so on and so forth. So now we have a lot more things to compare these to. I still find the Windows Mixed Reality controllers comfortable, but clearly now they are heavy. And it's mostly because of the fact that they're using two AA batteries. Now, with the Windows Mixed Reality controllers, a common issue that I had also with the Oculus Touch controllers, the first gen, was sometimes through use, I tend to pull the battery door off, just like that. And it's just from squeezing or how I'm, handling controller or what I'm doing in the experience. But overall, I do like how this controller fits in the hand. It's weighted just right, sits in the hand just naturally, all right? So that brings us to the Oculus Touch controllers, their second gen. But I still have the issue, and it's nowhere near as bad as it is with my Windows Mixed Reality or the Oculus Rift CV1, but I have pulled the display, the battery door down. Now, through use, because of where it's situated, the battery door here is a magnetic door that is on the inside, towards your palm, basically by your thumb. All right, it uses two magnets, just like the Oculus Touch 1 controllers, but it's only using one AA battery, and I'll get back to that in just a moment. Pops in just like that. So being that it's designed where it's near your thumb, there's not a lot of articulation in that part of your hand. So even if I do pull it down, it's only just a little bit, and I normally just lift up my thumb and it clicks back in. No problems, no harm, no foul. It never gets to the point like I've had it actually with the Windows Mixed Reality. I've actually pulled the battery bays off before. Didn't take me out of the experience. I kind of laughed about it. I kept going about my VR experience until I was done, and then put the battery door back on. Same thing with the Oculus Rift Touch controllers, the CV1. This one, I never really pulled it completely off. Always just down a little bit, just enough to make me notice it, and then I just normally lift up my thumb and it clips back in, no problems. You do have the Oculus button here, as well as A, B, and the other controller that pairs with this one is very similar in design. You do have the analog stick there that can depress as a button. You have the trigger on the front, and then you have the gripper button here on the side. It fits in the hand pretty well because of the battery placement and everything like that. It is a little bit back heavy, but the weight of it is very evenly distributed, unlike a lot of the other controllers that are out there. Does fit in the hand kind of well. Now, the only thing is the tracking ring. They had to put the tracking ring on the top because of the type of tracking that they're doing. Unfortunately, that, along with the shape of it, it is very thin, very tall to try to make it sit in the hand in such a way, trying to make it so you guys can see this, it basically sits in the palm very naturally. So that way your thumbs kind of come around very naturally. And that's why they had to make it thin and tall. But the thing is, they made it thin and tall with this ring on top. So now it wants to tilt all the time. So you never really feel like, I mean, it sits in your hand pretty well once you get it there. But when you go to get it in your hand, or you grab it for the first time, or if you're having someone come over to try VR for the first time, you put this around their wrist. You tell them this is their right controller. they do so, or you help them get it around their wrist. And the first thing they want to do, and I found this with almost every person I put this on, whether it was the Quest or the Oculus Rift S, they grab it upside down and they try to use their thumb on the trigger. Because the weight of it, the ring here, as well as the design of the handle being thin but tall, it either wants to be like this or like this. And because of the ring, it wants to be like this. This is how the weight of it makes it want to sit in your hand. So you have to always, it's no longer where like the Windows Mixed Reality headsets, you pick up the controller and it sits in your hand that way and you just go about your business. This one, you always have to be conscious when you pick it up to pick it up correctly. And that's a little bit annoying. I know it was a design sacrifice that they had to make. I know them, as far as Oculus, is very aware of designing things for comfort and ergonomics and ease of use. So they're probably very well aware of that design flaw where it wants to tilt and rotate all the time. But I don't feel like it's a horrible controller design. I don't feel like it's the worst thing in the world. I still like these controllers even compared to the Windows Mixed Reality. Just whenever you get new people in or when you first use it yourself, you're going to notice like, wow, this feels weird, and you have to like rotate in your hand to get it just right, and then it feels natural. All right, so right now in this mirror, we're going to kind of go over the motion tracking. It is using a similar technology as to Windows Mixed Reality, but you will notice that when I start getting behind my ears, that's when the controllers start clipping in and out of tracking. It does a very good job otherwise, and I do gotta say, I do feel like it does a better job than Windows Mixed Reality. And you can see here I'm demonstrating there is software in place that takes the motion data from the controllers, and if you move your hand fast behind your back, like the Oculus Quest, it will estimate where you're going with it. So it does kind of show your hand going behind your back, like you in Space Pirate Trainer need to grab a shield. You can do so with quick motions, but if you do small motions, that's when it starts having an issue. Once I started going beyond the distance of the back of my ear. Also going real close to the headset, you can see I'm testing it there. There is a little bit of motion tracking loss. Once I literally touch the controller to the headset, I feel that's completely acceptable. At that point, I could get real close to my headset and it doesn't really start losing tracking until almost touching the headset itself. Next, we're going to go into visuals, and while we're talking here, I'm going to basically overlay some through the lens shots so that way you guys can see what's going on and what we're talking about. The lenses on here are very similar to what you experienced in the past as far as like, you know, Windows Mixed Reality, Oculus. All of them have the Fresnel rings in there, and you're going to notice specifically with this headset that there's not as much God rays as what we experienced in the past. It's very hard for me to even notice any God rays in this headset. I'm actually really impressed by that. I don't know if it's the LCD display that they're using and the light output from that. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but I haven't really noticed much at all. I know that they're there, but nowhere near as much as what we've experienced in the past from any of the other headsets, which is very welcomed and very nice. The black levels of the panel are not going to match like OLED displays, and that's just something you have to be realistic about. No matter what, black levels are not going to be as good, but through like the setup process when you first go into the Oculus, there are these images like of a whale that comes over you, and you look around, everything's sort of like disco-y looking as far as these beautiful like lines of different colors that pass all around you, and then it brings you to your opening experiences where you learn to use the touch controllers and grip and everything. Through that, there's a lot of colors, there's a lot of lights, there's a lot of things that go over you. I never once felt like I had a black level disparity between this headset and like the Odyssey or the Quest at that point. I was amazed by the visuals that I was experiencing, and the first thing that hit me at that point was how hard it was to see the screen door. Just how visually beautiful everything looked. Now, if I do compare the headsets side by side, I quickly noticed that there is a black level disparity because of the LCD panels, but it never takes me out of the experiences. I never noticed like a gray wash over everything. Everything always looks dark enough to me while I'm in the experience. It's only when you compare the headsets back to back that you're like, oh yeah, no, that's in the Samsung Odyssey, that's purely black, because the AMOLED displays, they'll get, the pixels will turn off, and so black levels look black because they are off. Whereas in this one here, because any sort of LCD, you do have a backlight. But again, I did not notice any sort of graying, which you normally sometimes get with backlit displays, or any sort of washing out of color. Everything looked really good. And really the most surprising part was, even though this headset is of a lower resolution than the Quest and the Odyssey, it was really hard for me to see the pixels and the pixel space and the screen door effect. Now, a lot of us, especially sim racers, we have to look out into the distance. You know, sim flight and sim racing, we focus in the distance a lot. So the screen door effect is probably our biggest annoyance, because we try to read the gauges that are in the vehicles that we're driving or flying. We look out into the distance a lot for points of reference, brake zones, other cars, things like that. We're not always focused with what's in front of us, like a lot of VR standing experiences like Fruit Ninja or anything like that, or Super Hot VR. Things are always kind of close in front of you enough yet. But in some of these shots that I'm overlaying here, specifically inside the car, you're going to notice that it's still kind of blurry in the distance. And that's just because of the resolution at this point. You know, a lot of times we weren't, or I wasn't really sure, was it the resolution or is it the screen door effect that it's making it harder to see the cars in the distance? But now I could say specifically it's just resolution at this point. Because I don't, even if I'm looking out in the distance, I could kind of just see where the pixels are. But the inter-pixel space, the screen door, is not what's preventing me from being able to see detail at that point. So now it's just resolution at this point. But I do got to say, this is probably one of the better visuals I've had in a headset in a long time. Now, the Odyssey Plus used a screen overlay to kind of eliminate the screen door effect by filling the space, or perceiving to almost increase the pixels per inch at that point. Now, that implementation I don't feel like is as good as the LCD RGB stripe technology that a lot of these companies are going to, and I think that's why a lot of these companies are going to it, because it's probably cheaper to manufacture, as well as it's you don't get a little bit of that hazing or blurring with a screen overlay to try to eliminate the screen door. Now, I can't believe I forgot this information. The IPD adjustment in this is software based. There's no hardware implementation, but honestly, I think I forgot because it did not bother me. Now, my IPD is actually 64 millimeters. It defaulted at 63.5. But honestly, I never felt uncomfortable at all. The sweet spots felt appropriate in size, and I just didn't feel uncomfortable at all. I didn't feel any pressure on the insides or the outsides of my eyes when the IPD is incorrect. But lastly, I know we've been talking about a lot of positives here, so it seems like I love the design of it, or I should say I like the design of it, and I feel it's appropriate for the price point, and visually, this is a great headset. But problems. Now, one being the headset itself. I've experienced tons of software issues. Now, on the screen, I'm right now putting what I visually see probably every 10 to 20 minutes. And it's not only me, it's almost everyone I talk to that has an Oculus Rift S is experiencing this sort of screen static. It almost you guys could see it, but it to me almost looks like classic cable display static. It's very noticeable when it happens. It only seems to take up maybe one frame, which is interesting. And I've tried different USB ports. I've tried different display ports. It does not correct that issue. I hope it's a software issue because everyone I talk to that owns this headset seems to experience it. It doesn't necessarily take me out of the experience, but it gets me thinking about what the heck I just saw every time it happens. And in a race, that can be a little annoying when you're trying to focus. But, you know, in normal VR standing experiences, like Beat Saber or anything like that, It is noticeable, but it never really seemed to take me out of the experience. Now, a lot of people have been kind of questioning, do you notice the refresh rate of the panels, the 80 Hertz? Now, again, this one here uses an 80 Hertz display. Unfortunately, that's less than the standard that Oculus has always put out there, as it should be 90 plus. Now, we all know the Valve Index is going to be coming out with 120 Hertz display that you can overclock to 144 or 140 if you want to. That's awesome. That's amazing. I don't really notice the difference between the refresh rate with 80 to 90. Some people told me that they saw the flickering and they had to return the headset. Maybe if you're sensitive to that sort of thing, you might notice it. I never noticed it myself. So that's a good thing there, but I'm not sure what's going on software-wise. Another issue that we had, that we seem to have quite often in my initial impressions video, and afterwards we kept experiencing it over and over and over again, was just the panels would turn off. Not sure why. I don't know if it was the sensor on the inside causing a glitch with the software, but if we took the headset off, put it back on, the screens weren't turned on at all. Also, I noticed if I didn't start in the center of my play space, I couldn't get the screens on for a good 2 to 3 minutes of unplugging and replugging in the headset. Even though the mirrored view of the headset showed that we were tracking, and I did have sound coming out of the headband here, we were not actually getting any sort of visuals in the headset itself for, you know, a few times of unplugging and replugging in the headset. And lastly is the loss of tracking with the controllers. It's not because of the type of tracking that it is. I'm not exactly sure what's causing it, but every so often one of the controllers will just lose tracking completely. And I do still have gyroscopic tracking, where if I rotate the hand, but no more positional tracking. And that happened to me probably about 3 or 4 times in the past little over a week that we've had the headset, which to me is a bunch. One thing that I do gotta say though is Oculus has been rolling out a lot of updates. It seems to be almost every day I come on the headset to do something, there's some sort of update. Yesterday when I was about to film the review and I was filming certain scenes, we had 2 more major updates. So I had to retest last night through today to kind of see if there was any sort of differences. Unfortunately, that screen's static issue, as well as some of the other screen timeout issues, are still happening. So I'm not sure what's going on there. And lastly, the audio. Now, if you've heard the live stream, I'm going to put up the audio right now. I'm just excited how this all looks. I was not expecting it at all to look anywhere near this good. I really wasn't. Now you can see the microphone is not really that great at all in this headset. Now for VR experiences, it works well, but if you're live streaming or if you're doing, you know, stuff that we do quite often, like simulation type stuff, it may or may not work for you. For live streaming, I wouldn't recommend using this microphone. It just doesn't sound good at all. It sounds like a radio transmission. It does not sound good. And secondly, the speakers that are in this headset. I'm not going to say headphones because they're not headphones. I don't know how you would classify them besides speakers. So it does have little ports here on either side, and these are the speakers or headphones that blow the audio over your ears. That being said, for most VR experiences, like the Oculus Quest, I'm impressed by it, and I do like it. I do like the sort of spatial audio. I do like feeling my ears are open, but yet I'm hearing the sound around me. I do actually get a good sense of positional audio, which is nice. And it's, again, nice not having anything over or in my ears. I feel very open in that sense, especially in its implementation in the Quest. Unfortunately here, we do a lot of simulation, and we do specifically sim racing. And a lot of those cars have lumpy bass notes with the engine as far as, big V8s or V12s or V10s. You get a lot of that raspy bass note from the exhaust. That does not come through these headphones at all. That's when these headphones kind of give up and you hear it, and you really feel the disparity of this head strap speaker design. It's not recommended at all for simulation that you use these. For normal VR standing experiences and social experiences, when you have friends over, family over, anything like that, it works perfectly. But anything simulation based, especially sim racing, does not work at all and does not sound good at all. And unfortunately, I have Sennheiser headphones that I use for my sim racing. They're open back style headphones. I love them, but they don't really work with this Halo head strap design. There is a headphone jack on the side here where you could put earbuds in. I even specifically said the HTC Vive earbuds that it came with originally would be perfect because it's a short strap, goes right into your ears. But there's also been other reports of gaming headsets that have specifically a wide head strap. Does work really well with this headphones. So it's going to be a serious case of your mileage may vary at this point. Depending on your headphone head strap design, it may or may not work with this Halo design on the Oculus. But if you are just using a headset specifically for VR room scale experiences, I believe this would be perfect for you. It's very immersive because you feel like you're hearing sounds from around you. But again, simulation, get your headphones, get your earbuds. At least they included a head jack right on the side that's easily accessible because you're probably going to need it. So at this point, do I recommend this headset for us simulation type people? Right now, I do got to say it's kind of a mixed bag. I don't know what I should say or shouldn't say. Would I buy it? This is not my headset. This is actually lent to me for this review. I wouldn't buy it right now. I feel like there's some things that need to get ironed out. I'm going to watch the Reddit posts carefully. I'm going to keep doing my research as far as when these issues get ironed out. I feel like the issues that this headset is having is kind of a little bit unnecessary, and it shouldn't be happening at all. It's a little ridiculous that we're having these sorts of issues at this point in time with an Oculus headset, especially being that Oculus released the Quest at the same time, which is a beautiful implementation of a headset. Of course, visually, nowhere near as good as what you're going to experience here because of the screen type, as well as just processing power of the desktop computer versus the mobile processor in the Quest. But for room scale VR, I love that headset for what it is. This one here, that static screen, I feel is unacceptable, as well as the tracking issues that I'm having are unfortunate and also unacceptable. Having a controller just lose tracking and it's almost dependable on when it's going to happen, or the fact that sometimes when I start up this headset, the screens don't come on, and that's a frustrating experience. Pull out the computer again, start unplugging, replugging in, opening up the Oculus software, making sure the headset is being seen in the devices, or restarting it from the Oculus software. They do have, under the beta features, a restart Oculus button that you can click, and going through that for 5 to 10 minutes at a time. It's not every time, but it's most times, is quite a bit annoying. Now, again, they are releasing a lot of updates that seem to be large updates, because I've never seen VR updates that make you restart your computer, and seeing this volume of updates come down the pipe, it's promising that in the future, probably near future, this headset's going to be rock solid. I do love the asynchronous space warp technology, all their technology that they have in the headset to make you hit on a lower end system their 80 hertz, their frame rate that they want you to hit for this headset. So we want any sort of software that we possibly can to help get us to that 90 or 80 hertz refresh rate that a lot of these panels run at. I do love that technology, but if the headset's having issues like this, it can make a fun experience an annoying and frustrating experience. And then you're unfortunately probably going to end up just hanging up the headset or putting it down on the desk and not using it as often, or you're not going to be able to count on it. Now, we did have a race a few days ago. It was just a fun race with some people in Project Cars 2. I opted to use my screen because I felt like I couldn't rely on this headset. And afterwards, when I was thinking about it, because I just made that decision, I didn't really give it much thought. I just made the decision, did the race, did the live stream. If you guys had a chance to watch that live stream, I greatly appreciate it. Afterwards, I thought about it. That's pretty unacceptable. That, you know, we have an Oculus headset, which I always felt like is the most reliable headsets out there. Their software suite's always reliable, and we couldn't even rely on it for a fun race. So that's where we're at right now. That's how I'm feeling at the moment, and I do feel in time this is going to be a great headset, a great buy for us simulation people out there once they get those issues resolved. So I'm Crash, this is RTA Motorsports. Thank you so much for joining in. I hope I gave you enough information to make an informed buying decision. Again, hit that like button, that subscribe button if you want to see more. We do live stream pretty often, and we try to get products in to do these reviews. If you guys have any suggestions on reviews or other topics you want me to cover, leave them in the comment box below, and also let me know what you think of this headset if you owned it, or if you owned it and returned it, or if you own it and you're keeping it and you absolutely love the headset. Either way, leave it in the comment box below. So again, I'm Crash. Thank you so much for joining in. We'll see you next time.